1 week ago in Anaheim, California, the 2025 Pokémon GO World Championships were held. Hundreds of trainers descended on that convention center to fight for the chance to become Pokémon GO's newest world champion. When the dust had settled, we had 3 days of action-packed gameplay and some of the best battles that I have ever seen. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing some of my personal favorite battles from the World Championships, as well as some battles recommended by viewers just like you. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at some of the best in the world squaring off at the World Championships. The first match is between Ashton Ash and 2014 video game world champion Sagen Park. Ash is running an anti-meta team built around Runerigus, whereas Sagen is opting for a more conventional meta team built around Dedenne. We have mirror leads in game number 1, Shadow Quagsire versus Shadow Quagsire. Both trainers opting for the Air/Mandibuzz in the back, but where the teams differ is Sagen has brought the Shadow Scizor as his third Pokemon, whereas Ashton Ash has brought that ever-trusty Runerigus. This matchup will be determined by who wins charge attack priority, and Ashton Ash has the higher attack Quagsire. Sagen will no-shield Aqua Tail lands, and Ashton Ash is able to win alignment. Switch advantage should be very important in this matchup. In comes Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz will go for an incredibly aggressive farm down Stone Edge coming out from Ashton Ash. Sagen is going to let it go, and that is big damage. Quagsire unable to make it to another Aqua Tail, but at this point the damage has been done. Ash can very comfortably bring in his own Mandibuzz into Sagen's Mandibuzz and just look to absorb energy. In comes Shadow Scizor. Scizor immediately will be chipped with an Aerial Ace. That's going to pressure a shield, and now we will see the switch into Runerigus. Runerigus does have 5-4 pacing to Brutal Swing, meaning that it will outpace that Scizor in the long run. Night Slash does get shielded. We see the shake of the head from Sagen, as Sagen realizes at this point there is just no ability to get rid of the Mandibuzz from Ash. Even if Sagen is able to catch this Brutal Swing onto Mandibuzz, that simply does not win the game, as Ash could just bring in his own Mandibuzz, farm all the way down, and take the win. Brutal Swing from the Runerigus will knock out the Scizor. Back in comes the Mandibuzz. It has quite a lot of energy, but it's just simply not enough damage to get through Ash's Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz will attempt an Aerial Ace and an Air/Farm down, but it's not to be. Rock Tomb comes out from the Runerigus, knocking Mandibuzz out of the sky, and Ash is up 1-0. Sagen will need an adjustment for game number 2, and there it is. Shadow Scizor has been benched in favor of Dedenne. The Mandibuzz for Ash was too strong in the endgame in game number 1, so for game number 2, Sagen has brought Dedenne, the hardest counter to Mandibuzz in the game. The leads are a pretty neutral lead, all things considered. Dark Pulse obviously will hit for super effective, but Runerigus can outpace and hit for super effective damage and apply attack debuffs with Rock Tomb. We will see the shield from Sagen, as anytime you're running Dedenne, you want to try and play for switch advantage. At -2, there's worry that Aerial Ace may not knock out, so Sagen will go for the Dark Pulse. Ashton Ash will now get to fire off the Rock Tomb. Sagen has to decide, is it worth the final shield? Sagen says no, and instead can look to bring in Quagsire. There's a pivot into Golisopod. Golisopod will be answered with Dedenne, and things could get very, very tricky for Ashton Ash. Ashton Ash needs to bait out the Dedenne, able to deal a massive amount of damage to that Dedenne, but now things are looking quite difficult, as how do you remove Dedenne from the field of play? In comes Runerigus, but it doesn't have any energy. Runerigus forced to put up a shield, and now Sagen will know what's in the back. It's going to be that Mandibuzz once again. Brutal Swing is reached, and at this point, up a shield, Shadow Quagsire can close out the game versus the Mandibuzz. Ash knows he's in trouble. He will fire off this Brutal Swing. No shielded by the Quagsire. In comes the Mandibuzz, and it's Sagen's game, as he will be able to secure the equalizer in game number 2. The adjustment to bring that Dedenne proves to be a very wise one. The Aerial Ace will force the final shield from the Quagsire, but there's no shields left for Mandibuzz to hide behind. There is the Stone Edge ready right on cue. Sagen gets the equalizer, and we're going to be going to a decisive game number 3 in this series. The leads are locked in, and it's a great lead for Ash. Shadow Quagsire into Shadow Scizor. Safe switch by Sagen into Mandibuzz will be answered with the Acid Critterly, and so far everything is going great for Ashton Ash. This is a very good matchup for Cradilly. Cradilly is able to hit for big super effective damage with Rock Tomb and consistently apply debuffs to the Mandibuzz as well. Mandibuzz is quite slow. Ash will fire off the Rock Tomb. He's going to go for an undercharge on the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb does not knock out, and that will allow the Mandibuzz to make one final move. The reason Ash went for the undercharge is Ash does not want to surrender a lot of farm to the Scizor. But even in doing so, Scizor will get a 3-bullet punch head start, and that's a big problem for the Quagsire. In comes Quagsire, will fire off the Aqua Tail. Shadow Scizor will put up the shield. Scizor can threaten quite a lot of damage as it farms up to the Trailblaze. We will see the bait here, going for the Night Slash. Night Slash will get the shield and the boost, and that is absolute disaster for Ash. Ash is gonna no shield, hoping he can hang on, and Quagsire hangs on 1 HP to make a last-second Aqua Tail. That will grab the shield from Sage, and there's the switch into Runerigus, but look at the damage from these bullet punches. My goodness, Ash does not CMP tie, instead opting to go for the extra Shadow Claw, and there's a switch into Dedenne. Sajin hoping to try and catch a Brutal Swing, but it's not to be. The Rock Tomb will connect, and my goodness, this Runerigus has already taken so much damage. This is a -1 play rough. Can Runerigus hang on? The play rough lands. Runerigus is so low. Ash farms up the absolute maximum on energy and will fire off the Rock Tomb to pick up the knockout. Does it have the Brutal Swing loaded? Yes, it does, and Ashton Ash survives, boosting Scizor. Not enough for Sajin Park, and Ashton Ash will advance in the World Championships. The next match we'll be taking a look at is Bilzo versus Danny Boost 30. Bilzo placed 4th at the previous year's World Championship and is now back to look to improve on that placement. This is a winner's semifinals game, so the winner of this best of 3 makes it to day number 2. But it's a nightmare lead for Bilzo, leading Moltres into Tinkaton. The safe switch Shadow Marowak is going to be answered with Quagsire. Danny needs to shield here because whoever lands a charge attack first in this matchup will have the ability to control switch advantage for the rest of the game. And considering how good of a lead that was for Danny has high incentive to commit the first shield. But Bilzo knows that that will not be enough to knock out, able to withstand the Aqua Tail, fire off the Bone Club on the CMP tie, and now Bilzo does have a shield advantage. Bilzo is going to be no shield in the Marowak, can look to get a little bit of an energy head start on the Moltres. Moltres gets a farm down, energy not going to go very far into the Tinkaton. There's going to be a switch into his own Tinkaton. Danny will stay in this matchup to fire off a Bulldoze. 50% chance at the defense drop, and there it is, so a bit of good luck goes Danny's way. Tinkaton will go for the play rough, and that's an instant no shield from the Corsola. Galarian Corsola is extremely bulky. And we see Bilzo intentionally not throw a charge attack and no shield. Bilzo sees a potential way out, and that is trying to get massive farm with the Galarian Moltres. Galarian Moltres will have to give up its shield advantage, but look at this farm. Danny's switch clock is not up, no way to save that Corsola. All that farm is given to the Moltres, and now Moltres, up so much energy, is going to try and do the impossible and flip Tinkaton. Fly is going to connect. Bilzo farming up very close to the back-to-back flies, and will go for fly number 2. This fly is going to be shielded up by Danny. Danny full sending the player of Bilzo with a decision to make. Last second shield gets it right, and that means Bilzo will get the Brave Bird. This is resisted damage onto the Tinkaton. It's enough, and Bilzo escapes hard counter city and wins game number 1. The lead situation looks so much better for Bilzo in game number 2. We do see the Moltres has been benched, and in its place is Lapras. Lapras, pretty fine into the Fury Cutter Golisopod. Obviously, Lapras' energy is walled here, but it's still fine because Psywave is just an incredibly cracked move. X-Scissor will force an early shield from Bilzo. Bilzo now at the back-to-back Sparkling Arias, and this is an open team sheet format, so Danny knows he's very safe to instantly click no shield. Danny more than happy just to take shield advantage in this matchup, as Lapras will now be met with the Galarian Corsola. Galarian Corsola going to be hit with an Ice Beam, the no shield from Danny. Danny will exit with a lot of energy, and now Bilzo will aggressively pivot into Tinkaton. Tinkaton answered with Quagsire. Tinkaton building up to the play rough, baiting with the Bulldoze. Danny thinks about it, puts up the shield, gets baited, but no defense drop comes through. Danny was able to get the defense debuff in game 1. It still wasn't enough, but Bilzo unfortunately cannot get there. This is a second Aqua Tail. Can Tinkaton hang on? Tinkaton is going to survive. The matchup knowledge from Bilzo now gets to connect with the much harder hitting play rough, and there's an aggressive switch into the Marowak. Marowak unable to get that farm down, forced to burn the final shield, and Danny will get to send in Corsola. Nightshade will do a solid amount of neutral damage onto this Marowak. Marowak with no shields left to hide behind. Marowak will get to the back-to-back Bone Clubs, and Danny is in trouble as Bone Club number 1 will get the shield. Bone Club number 2 will be enough to knock out the Corsola. Corsola simply cannot survive the onslaught. In comes Quagsire. Bilzo Boy farms down. What a series as he wins 2 games to 0. We now move to day number 2, Maxi versus Pato Man. And this matchup will be a nightmare for Pato Man, as Maxi's Galarian Moltres is able to beat Pato Man's entire team. The leads are set for game number 1, and Pato's Fortress is able to find a target as it's leading into the Fury Cutter Golisopod. Golisopod will connect with the Aqua Jet. There's going to be a save switch into Galarian Corsola. Pato Man does not have a response to a Galarian Corsola save switch, so his plan is to Rock Tomb it, lower its attack, and then look to Mirror. Corsola going to be hit with a debuff to Nightshade. Once the Nightshade is not at full power, suddenly it's much less threatening, so Pato Man will decide to no shield. Pato could have thrown the Nightshade to pick up the knockout, but he has other ideas. He knows Corsola energy is valuable, so he's just going to go for a full farm down, and this energy hits super effective into everything that Maxi has brought to this battle. In comes the Moltres. Moltres immediately under pressure from the back-to-back power gems. We see the shield from Maxi. There's the switch into Golisopod. It's a catch, but not much of one. It's super effective. We see Pato Man going for the undercharge, and now the switch into Lapras. Pato knows that Lapras energy is so valuable here into this Moltres. X-Scissor will be no-shielded. Lapras gets the full farm down, and that's just going to be curtains for Maxi in game number 1. The Galarian Moltres, on paper, beats the entire team, but pristine energy management by Pato Man means that this Galarian Moltres will effectively be neutralized. Ice Beam lands. That's just too much of a health loss. Pato Man looking to switch into the Fortress. Fortress does get that Bug Bite through. Will put up the shield as Maxi will go for the fly. Bug Bite picks up the KO, and Pato Man is up 1 game to 0. We move to game number 2. Fortress once again in the lead, this time going to be met with the Galarian Moltres. Moltres farms up to the Brave Bird. We do see the fly bait, and the bait is successful, able to grab a shield. Fortress will look to get the shield back as it fires off the Rock Tomb. Both trainers have brought their Galarian Corsolas to this battle. The third for Maxi is Tinkaton, and for Pato Man, he's again brought Lapras. Maxi now going to full send, go for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to be shielded. There's the save switch once again into the Corsola. Pato Man going for the same strategy as before. He's going to apply that Rock Tomb debuff, but here's the switch. He's not going to be bringing in his Corsola. Instead, he brings in the Lapras, saving his Corsola for the endgame. Power Gem is super effective, but at -1, Lapras suddenly a lot less worried. Lapras very close to the back-to-back Sparkling Arias. Maxi is going to be no-shielding. Aria not going to be enough to knock out. Unable to get the Power Gem as that Sparkling Aria number 2. Maxi still has the Moltres, could bring it in here, but no, decides to save that Moltres for later and bring in Tinkaton. Tinkaton is behind on energy though. It's going to be met with the Aria. This will do meaningful chip damage as that Tinkaton is now approaching half HP. Maxi, very precise counting, not going to let the Lapras get a second Aria. Player off will be enough to pick up the knockout, but now in comes the Galarian Corsola. And this Galarian Corsola's remaining health is a pretty big issue. Player off will land, it's going to do some nice damage. In comes Moltres, landing sucker punches, in comes Fortress, and he does not get the fly. And unfortunately, this is just going to be curtains as Maxi realizes there is no way forward in this game. Sand Tomb never going to do a lot of damage, but it will apply a guaranteed defense drop. He's at the back-to-back bulldozes, but he's going to need a play rough into the Corsola, and one Astonish will be enough to knock him out. He tries to get there, he cannot. Pato, despite being 6 times weak to Moltres, takes the 2-0 win. We stay with Maxi now in losers round 2, and he's battling against Jocks. Jocks is running a team built around Shadow Scizor, whereas Maxi, we've seen his team, it is built around the Tinkaton. Both battlers lock in game number 1, and it's a terrible lead for Maxi as he leads the Galarian Moltres into Azumarill. Now Maxi does have 2 better answers to Azumarill in the back, but obviously switch locking a Galarian Corsola when Jocks does have access to a Galarian Moltres could make life a little bit uncomfortable here. Moltres will go for the Brave Bird, Jocks sniffs it out. We do see the save switch into the Corsola, now answered with the Moltres, but Maxi has the shield advantage. with a shield advantage, Galarian Corsola can put up quite a fight here. Corsola will go for the Power Gem. That's going to connect. That's some pretty significant damage. Good overfarm by Jocks. Fly will be lethal from this health range. Maxi decides to let it go. The Fly is going to land. He can bring in the Tinkaton. Tinkaton obviously would be a wall to this energy. Maxi brings in the Tinkaton. Jocks only going to get to a Fly, but even a Fly is still going to be shielded up here as Tinkaton looks to preserve as much HP as it possibly can. In comes Galarian Corsola, and Corsola's strong neutral matchups prove to be pretty difficult for Tinkaton. Tinkaton is up energy, Play Rough does get to land, but honestly the Astonish damage is the biggest factor here, as this Tinkaton is already almost half HP purely off of the Astonishes. Quick switch into the Moltres, Jocks says no, he's going to bring in the Azumarill. Azumarill always going to be protecting its health bar here as Moltres makes the Brave Bird. Azumarill is going to get the full farm down. Back in comes the Tinkaton. Tinkaton has a dominant matchup into Azumarill, but if Tinkaton has taken damage, then suddenly this matchup gets flipped on its head. As unfortunately, Tinkaton does not do a large amount of damage to Azumarill. It's going to need multiple Play Roughs, and that is going to be the downfall for Maxi in this game, as he will get to the Play Rough, but it just simply does not pick up the KO. Azumarill will get a full farm down, and Jocks takes game number 1. Game number 2 for Maxi, bad lead, Golisopod into the Shadow Scizor. Golisopod will farm up, fire off the Aqua Jet. Shadow Scizor would instantly get KO'd, so it will of course put up a shield. Scizor farms up to 8 bullet punches, firing off the Night Slash. Maxi with a choice to make decides to let it go. Night Slash lands, there's the boost, and that is bad news for Maxi. This is now a boosted Night Slash. He decides to let it go. Shadow Scizor boosts again, and you can immediately see the frustration from Maxi. That is incredibly bad luck. In comes Galarian Moltres. Moltres gets a full farm down, but look at the bullet punches. It's now at a quarter health. In comes the Galarian Moltres for Jocks. Maxi has farmed up to the Brave Bird and will bait with the Fly. Jocks will shield the Fly. He's looking for a farm down here. He decides against it as he realizes Maxi can get to this Brave Bird. The Fly will be shielded. Maxi gets the Brave Bird. There's a catch onto the Azumarill by Jocks, but this Brave Bird will inflict some pretty serious damage, and out comes Galarian Corsola. And suddenly, Maxi sees it. Despite the double boost on the Scizor, there is a way to win this game. Azumarill goes for the Ice Beam. It's no shielded by the Corsola. Corsola loses if it throws a move, so he's simply never going to throw. He knows that if he shields and leaves with 100 energy, he can win this game. So he plays to the win con. He farms all the way down. He has the back-to-back power gems loaded. Galarian Moltres does not have the energy. It needs a Fly. It cannot get there. And despite a 4 times boosted Scizor, Maxi survives, and we're going to a game number 3. The leads are the same as game number 1, leading Galarian Moltres into Azumarill. But this time we see an adjustment in strategy here from Maxi. Not only has he benched the Corsola, but he's off to a great start with an Ice Beam catch onto Tinkaton. Tinkaton will be met with the Corsola from Jocks. Jocks was ABA weak to the Tinkaton, so he's pretty happy to see it here, but Maxi being able to save energy on his Moltres while wasting the Azumarill energy should help him quite a bit in the endgame. We can see with these different leads how battles have the ability to play out so differently depending on the plays that these battlers make. Play Rough does get shielded up. Jocks is going to look for a full farm down, but Maxi says no. Aggressive pivot into the Moltres. Power Gem will get the shield back, and now in comes Azumarill, but the issue for Jocks is Jocks is desynced to switch timers. Maxi full sends the Brave Bird. That's going to be no shielded. Maxi will get to a second Brave Bird on charge attack priority, but a Brave Bird isn't even needed. He can pick up the knockout with the Fly. Azumarill gets KO'd. All it did was remove a lot of energy from the field. Moltres will get to the Brave Bird. This Brave Bird threatens a knockout, so Jocks will be forced to burn a shield. And now Maxi can switch. He sends in the Credilli. This is a tough call to make. Jocks has enough for the Brave Bird. Maxi thinks it over. He calls the bait. No shield in the Fly, and that instantly puts him in a winning position, as now he can shield up Fly number 2 and just look to overfarm, watching for a catch. There's the switch into Galarian Corsola. Corsola will get knocked out by this Rock Tomb, and he's only 1 off the second Rock Tomb, and Maxi survives the quad boosted Scizor, flips the script, and he's advancing 2 games to 1. The next match we'll be taking a look at is going to be Mitchi versus Firestar. This is again on the loser side of the bracket. Mitchi running a pretty interesting team built around Shadow Sableye and Blastoise, whereas Firestar has Shadow Typhlosion and Tinkaton. Both battlers lock in for game number 1, and it's a great lead for Firestar as he leads Credilli into Blastoise. Mitchi running a line very soft to Credilli. Mitchi is going to throw the Hydro Cannon on alignment to guarantee damage onto the Credilli, and is now going to pivot into his own. He is on Bullet Seed Credilli. Firestar is on Acid. Firestar will farm up to 100 energy and connect with the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb lands. Firestar switches out. He's going to be sending in the Marowak. Even though Grass Knot is debuffed, it will still inflict some pretty significant damage, so Firestar will put up a shield. Firestar can now play to the CMP tie, making life very uncomfortable for Mitchi. Mitchi puts up the shield, but if Firestar wants, he will have the ability to just fully slap down with the Marowak. Marowak will commit the shield. There's a pivot out into the Blastoise. Blastoise unable to get to the move before Marowak will fire off the Bone Club, burning his switch clock, and just like that, Credilli rehits the field. Credilli will go for the Rock Tomb. Mitchi is going to no-shield. Rock Tomb still enough to pick up the KO, and Mitchi still in a very difficult spot. In comes that Marowak. Marowak farming up, trying to get to the Bone Club, but not going to get there. Shielding up the Rock Tomb bait, now going to be debuffed until a switch out occurs. Marowak does get the full farm down, exiting with a massive amount of energy. In comes Galarian Moltres. Moltres immediately met with the Rock Slide. Rock Slide will land, but at -1, not as threatening as it typically could be. In comes Credilli. Marowak gets the full farm down, and that's going to be a game 1 win, as this Bone Club is just going to inflict too much damage onto the opposing Marowak. Mitchi will be able to KO Firestar's Marowak, but he just simply does not have the energy in reserves needed to make it to the Rock Slide. He could make the Bone Club, but that's not nearly enough, and Firestar takes game 1. For game number 2, it's Shadow Marowak versus Blastoise. The Mud Slaps are a pretty big problem for the Blastoise over time, as obviously Blastoise doesn't really deal any damage unless it can land a Hydro Cannon. So the Marowak is going to bank so much energy and switch into Credilli. Credilli chipped down with the Hydro Cannon as Mitchi has again run a line extremely soft to this Credilli. Mitchi will go for Hydro Cannon number 2. Firestar more than happy just to let this go. Now, will Mitchi send in the Credilli? Yes, there is the Credilli switch in, looking to absorb this energy, as Credilli is the only Pokemon on this line of 3 that doesn't take super effective damage from the Credilli. Credilli cannot get the Grass Knot. Firestar more than happy to let this go. He does have so much loaded energy on the Marowak, but he's not going to be using it here, as the correct play will be to send in Tinkaton. Tinkaton can shut down energy from the Credilli. Mitchi not bringing his own Tinkaton meant that the Credilli has been very, very safe for Firestar. Play Rough comes out from the Tinkaton. This is debuff. There's a simultaneous switch, Marowak into Marowak. Firestar immediately going for the Bone Club. That's going to grab the first shield of the match from Mitchi. They played a charge attack priority, and now we know that Mitchi does have the lower attack Marowak. This is good information for Firestar to have. Now he knows that he can confidently play to the CMP tie, so he will be able to throw 3 Mud Slaps and the Bone Club, maximizing as much fast move damage as he possibly can. His Bone Club will not knock out. Mitchi's Bone Club will be lethal. However, this may potentially set up a farm down for Firestar. He gets to bring in the Tinkaton. Fairy Winds adding up. Can he get the farm down? Yes, he can. Exiting with so much energy, and Mitchi's now in a serious amount of trouble. In comes Blastoise. There's an attempt at a peekaboo play, but it's not going to happen. Firestar will fire off the Bulldoze, winning CMP over Credilli. In comes the Blastoise. Play Rough is reached, and that's going to be a 2-0 series victory as down goes Blastoise. The next match we'll be taking a look at is LNDS Corash versus Magic Mason. Mason is building around the Annihilate plus Dedenne core, whereas Corash is opting for the Galarian Corsola, which has been very strong in this tournament. We have the Battle of Ground types in game number 1. Shadow Marowak into Diggersby. Corash with the catch. Beautiful play. Banking the Bone Club and catching the Scorching Sands on Amandabuzz, where it will be double resisted. Scorching Sands does get the debuff. In comes Credilli. This line that Corash is running is very, very soft to Credilli. Corash would love nothing more than to burn the switch timer, save energy on the Mandibuzz, reset debuffs, and pivot back out. So Corash is going to farm, waiting for Mason to throw, but Mason reads him like a book. Mason's going to farm up just shy of 100 energy, because now when Corash looks to switch back into the Marowak, The Grass Knot is ready. Great counterplay by Mason to deny Coralash's ability to have a free switch out. Back in comes the Diggersby, and the moves from the Marowak are not going to go very far here. Bone Club, not a particularly threatening attack. Diggersby, if it wants to, can even survive this next one as well, and that's exactly what Mason is going to go for. Mason knows he can hang on. He will get the Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands, while not a problem for the Marowak, will still be getting the Marowak into the red HP. No attack debuff comes through. A full farm down for the Marowak, exiting with a ton of energy. In comes Annihilate. But the issue for Mason is that this Annihilate is going to have to deal with a Mandibuzz that has a ton of energy and an Azumarill in the back. Annihilate puts up the shield as Mandibuzz will go for the Aerial Ace. Another Air Slash comes through, and this Mandibuzz has done a great job at tearing through these Protect Shields. Annihilate gets the full counter down, exiting with quite a bit of loaded energy, but in comes Azumarill. Annihilate will fire off the Rage Fist. Mason will look to send in Credilli. Will Coralash go for a catch here? No, Coralash does not. He does not go for the catch. Ice Beam will KO. Down goes Credilli. In comes Annihilate, and Annihilate just does not have the damage that it will need to take home this win. Coralash knows he can survive. Rage Fist lands. It's not enough, and Coralash will take the 1-0 series lead over Mason. And that's thanks in large part to that devastating Scorching Sands catch. We move to game 2, and it's a nightmare for Mason, leading to Dene into Credilli. Save switch Annihilate, instantly hard punished with the Air Slash Mandibuzz, and you could not imagine much of a worse start than this. That Ice Punch not doing nearly what you would hope it would. Mandibuzz landing the Aerial Ace, and that's going to set up a brutal Air Slash farm down. All seems lost for Mason, but if he can get a massive farm down with the Dene, he should have enough energy to actually overcome this Credilli. But Coralash realizes this. He has other ideas. He's going to pivot, saving the Mandibuzz, sending in the Credilli, just not letting Mason get the energy head start that he would need to be able to get rid of the Credilli. And now things get very uncomfortable. The Dene is going to no shield, calling that it is just a Rock Tomb, but that's still so much damage. Credilli can survive this player up, but it would still inflict some pretty serious damage. Credilli hangs on, not by much. Credilli gets a full farm down, and that's going to be all she wrote, as now Mandibuzz will be permanently debuffed. The Rock Tomb will be shielded. Shadow Marowak typically has a losing matchup here, but if Mandibuzz is debuffed and Marowak is up a shield, then Marowak actually is winning. Marowak will shield up the foul play and now just gets to slowly chip away with Rock Slide after Rock Slide. Mason puts up the shield, but he knows this is a very, very difficult spot to be in. He was able to neutralize that Credilli, but Credilli hanging on, exiting with the Rock Tomb to apply a permanent debuff is unfortunately what sunk him. Coralash knows this foul play just will not do enough. Coralash just needs to get to the Rock Slide, and that should do it. Mason shakes his head as this Credilli was just a little bit too much. Coralash advances 2-0. All in all, I think this was probably the highest play we've ever seen at a World Championships. The battles were absolutely unbelievable. I made an entire separate video just covering the Grand Finals because I felt the Grand Finals were an amazing display of what this game can be at a high level. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, my name is Home Slice Henry, and this is More Slice Henry, my second channel where I cover content primarily related to the Pokemon GO Championship series, educational content, and just in general content that I don't really feel fits the vibe of my main channel. If you enjoy content like that, then definitely leave a like on the video, consider subscribing to the channel if you have not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.